Welcome to the Lighthouse Financial Advisors Money Over 50 podcast with Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Lighthouse Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
So I'm here today with Michael Hogue. I'm Dallas Davison, and today we're going to talk about an idea of Michael's, which is to drive a $15,000 car and draw $717,000 of extra income in retirement. So it sounds a bit like an infomercial, but I'll let Michael run you through how this works.
It's a very specific title, isn't it? So the premise is, and we hear this quite a lot, I've turned 50, I've risen to that stage of my working career. I've, if not raised children that have flown the coop just yet, they're almost there, and I deserve to drive a nice car. Yeah. And maybe that's the case. Yeah. But we actually know from experience that most people finance new and expensive cars. So the more expensive the car, the higher probability it's being financed. Yeah. We also know that it's an average, but it costs somewhere in the vicinity of $1,250 per month in finance cost, or about $15,000 per year in repayments on a new and expensive car. What we hear from that is that, hey, it's tax deductible to me though, because I use it for business purposes. So a couple of things there. Tax deductible doesn't make it free. It means you're getting a percentage of your outlay back. And the second one is, with any decision that you can make, there is an alternative. And that's what we want to look at today. So the alternative is, in this example, is that instead of driving an expensive car for the last 15 years of your working life, you would pay cash for a $15,000 car, and you drive that car for the last 15 years of your working life. Now, full disclosure here, I used to drive an expensive car.
I was just about to pull you up on that, but away you go.
Full disclosure, I drove an expensive car. We then had 2 children, and I figured that they were just going to wreck the car anyway. So I started looking around, and I looked around, and I bought a $15,000 car, and the car has got leather seats. It's done 48,000 kilometres, so it was quite new. It was a Ford Falcon, so it was big enough. And I've driven that car for the last 3 years of my life, and it's had very little problems. And it got me to thinking about the difference here in what the alternatives are. So
that's a good point that you make there, Mike, because that, like you said, there's certain things that we hear a lot of, which is, I've reached this point where I've raised kids where I deserve to drive a nice car. The other one we hear, which again, I'm not arguing about whether that is true or not, but the other one we hear is, well, it's tax deductible. And then the last one that I hear all the time, which makes me pull my hair out, which is not good because I'm going bald early as it is, so is that buying a used car is going to cost me more over the long run because of the extra maintenance costs. And like you, I've driven old cars all my life, and I just haven't, either I've been extremely lucky or I just don't know if that's true, that those maintenance costs are as much as what people potentially think. So you can probably answer that one as well.
I can tell you it never costs you what you were going to pay in repayments on the new and expensive car. So people tend to build an argument around their decision. So they say, I want to drive a Lexus, and they build an argument around that. And this is true of decision making everywhere, isn't it? So they say, well, it's only going to cost me
the confirmation bias.
The confirmation bias. It's only going to cost me $1,250 per month. In fact, hey, it's not even going to cost me that. It's going to cost me about $700 per month because it's tax deductible. So I get some of that $1,250 back. It's just a little bit each month. Yeah. However, you pointed this out to me before. You see what's there. You don't see what's not there. So what I want to talk about is what's not there. So the alternative is that you pay cash for a car, and you take what you were going to make in $15,000 per annum repayments, and you put that money into your superannuation fund for the last 15 years of your working life. Now that too is tax deductible for most people, which is nice, but we can assume that for most people they would be able to, with what their employer puts into their superannuation fund, if assuming that's less than $10,000 per year, they would be able to put $15,000 into their superannuation fund each year, claim that as a tax deduction, they'd sneak under the $25,000 cap. They contribute $15,000 per annum to their superannuation fund, and that compounds out, assuming an 8% before tax return, which would be a 6.8% return after tax in super accumulation phase. They retire with an extra $315,000 in super by age 65.
Yep.
Now, that's staggering enough. However, part B of this is really where it becomes staggering. What they can now do with that extra $315,000 in their superannuation, by the day that they retire, they can now draw $30,000 of extra income each and every year, assuming they get that same 8% rate of return. And they can do it for a period of time of 24 years before that money runs out, before the extra $315,000 runs out. So you now have a decision to make, and the decision is the new car smell worth an overseas holiday each and every year of my retirement? Or is the new car smell worth whatever you want to do with that extra $30,000 of retirement? So basically, accumulating that extra $315,000, I'll just back up a little bit. So you, instead of financing your car for the last 15 years of your working life, in this example, this person's age 50, they put $15,000 extra into their superannuation fund each and every year. Hey, they claim it as a tax deduction too. We're assuming here. So they, for most people, that would mean that their tax return would boost by an average of $5,000 per year as well. They get to an extra $315,000 by the time they hit 65 in their superannuation fund by that, assuming that rate of return. They can now flick the switch and turn their superannuation into what's called an account-based pension, which is 0% tax on the earnings. What that means is that their 8% rate of return is both before and after tax, so they don't lose any money in that rate of return. Now, an 8% rate of return on $315,000 is $25,000 in the first year of their retirement. So we're assuming that they draw $30,000 of extra income, but the mere fact that they have accumulated an extra $315,000 means that the fund in this example has earned them $25,000. They've only gone backwards by $5,000 in that first year. They rinse and repeat that over the next 24 years. And what happens is that they can draw an extra $30,000 a year in income for the first 23 years of their retirement, and an additional $27,000 in the final year, which gives them a total of $717,000 of additional income that they've been able to draw over the first 24 years of their retirement.
It's one of those things, like I say, it's an amount of money that's almost hard to get your head around, and I think that ties into, like we've said before, is that most people understand the concept of putting money aside for retirement. So putting $15,000 a year before tax away, most people can kind of see how that would grow their super balance by an extra $315,000. And so you kind of, if you make just that trade-off, you look at it and go, well, yes, it's another $315,000, but I've got to drive a cheap car for the next 15 years. So whether or not that is enough to trigger that decision there, but it really is that next step that I think I tend to find that people really struggle with, the understanding that $315,000 extra in your super fund, it's not $315,000 that sits there and you just spend that down over time. So it's not that you're spending $315,000, you're drawing out of that $315,000. However, that money is getting a return every year. So that's where it can kind of be hard to comprehend. But by putting aside that 315,000, you effectively get to draw 717,000. So over those few steps, a bit of money every year, building up to 315,000 to then build into $717,000 worth of extra income. It sounds a bit unbelievable, but it's just the value of compounding over time and that investment return. So I can promise, I've just checked his numbers, it's all true, it stacks up, it makes sense.
That's good to know. So yeah, look, it really did surprise me as well. I mean, it's strategies that we've been working on with people, but to look at these numbers over that time frame, and many of you listening will be around that 50 years of age, because it's around then that people tend to start getting interested in their retirement planning. And it just goes to show that with every decision, this is true of every decision, not just financial ones, you really need to look at what the trade-offs are, because financial planning is all about trade-offs. Can I give up some now for a lot more later? And getting that balance right. This is a reasonably easy one for us. Well, it is for me, I should point out. So when I drive around in my $15,000 2010 Ford Falcon, I'm not sitting in there thinking, geez, I wish I was driving a Lexus. I'm just driving around in my car. I probably spend a lower amount of time than most people.
I was going to put it you do live 300 metres from the office. So.
I don't have a long commute from the office to home. However, even if I did, I mean, even if you have a long commute, add up the time of your working week that you, not your working week, of your entire week or your entire year that you spend in your car. I'm going to guess it's around 5%. For most people, it's around 5% of their time for the year is spent in their car. But we often see a mismatch then of someone then paying 15% of their wage towards that vehicle. So that it gets out of whack in many respects in that situation. But certainly look at the trade-offs in any decision that you make. Look at the alternative decisions.
I think that's sorry to jump in there, Mike, but that's the point you made before, and I've said this before a number of times, and I sort of get funny looks from people, but we see what's there, we don't see what's not there, and that's just the way our brain works. Is if we buy that new car, we're driving that new car, we see the new car, but we don't see what else we could have had instead. It's really hard for human beings to see those things, and to bringing it back to a concrete amount and a figure like this is something that makes you think about the alternatives and those trade-offs of, if I don't do this, what else can I do instead? And that's really what good financial planning is about. It's not about us deciding what you should or you shouldn't do. It's purely around helping people to understand what the consequences of those decisions are. And you may well look at this and go, hey, I drive a lot, and I'm really into cars. I really love having a nice new car, and I've decided that I'm going to find $15,000 a year from somewhere else. I'll save money from elsewhere, and I'll use that money to make contributions in the super. And that's again something where we can't make that decision for you. It's just about, this is a concrete example of one that people tend to do without really understanding the outcome that's going to lead to.
We are certainly fine with people making informed decisions. So a big and exciting part of what we do for our clients is to help them make those decisions. And it's really interesting when you go through and decide what's more important to you. So, like Dallas, you said, some people will make then an informed decision that they would rather drive the nice car now, and then they can shave in other areas, or they may already be on track to where they need to be anyway. If you're not on track though, look, it's a really good first place to look. Because
and that's one that we see a lot, where when you're looking at a budget with someone, I actually have started doing a thing where I basically sort everyone's expenses by the biggest to the lowest, because we end up having a debate with couples that are arguing amongst themselves about whether they spend $320 or $340 a week on groceries, and then it becomes an argument about one of them buys black and gold and one of them doesn't, and I'm caught in the middle where really that doesn't matter. It's those big decisions that are going to carry all the freight. So this is an example of something that for many people doesn't seem like a big decision of just, I needed a car, so I just went and got a new car because I can afford it. It's very easy to do that, and the culture and the society that we live in, which is relatively easy finance, all those types of things, it sort of guides us down that path of, well, this is an easy decision to make. I'll just get the new car, then I don't have to worry about it. Or I've got 5 years of capped price servicing, or I've got cheap finance, or I've got whatever it is. It's very easy to back our way into making that feel like the right decision. So, as we've said, having a sit down and think about what else you could be doing with that money is a very important way to really be concrete about what am I trading off? What else could I be doing there?
It's a great point. I think you also need to look at your point before, not the capital amount that you end up with, so not the 315,000.
Yeah.
It's the how much better could my retirement be by taking an extra $30,000 each and every year of my retirement. Yeah. What could I do with that money? Yeah. And that's really the crux of the decision making process.
And that I guess ties to your point there about deciding what is important. Financial planning is about to some degree delayed gratification, and so even if cars are very important for you, this could well be something where you say, okay, I'm 50 now, I'm working full time, I don't really have the time to be tinkering with cars and playing around with all these things. Even if you say cars are really important to me, this is a decision you could make where you go, okay, I'm not going to drive a new car, I'm not going to have the new car smell for 15 years, but what that's going to allow me to do is spend twice as much money every year for 24 years compared to 15 years. And that may be a decision where you go, that is the difference between a retirement that I'm excited for and looking forward to, and it's going to give me something to do and focus on in retirement, versus I'm going to spend all this money now on something that I'm not really going to get to enjoy that much because I'm working a lot and I'm busy for the next 15 years.
It's a very good way to look at it. So wrapping up, what I would say in wrapping up is certainly every decision you make, look at the trade-offs. Look at what may be the alternative decision. So if I did this, I'll get this, but what if I took that money and did something else with that? And ultimately decide what is more important, because that's a true informed decision.
That's exactly right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Lighthouse Financial Advisors. We look forward to catching up again soon.